And we have Eric Donnenfeld, who is primarily a cataract, corneal, and refractive surgeon, but he has been involved in minimally invasive glaucoma surgery, has traveled abroad and done procedures, and now is quite excited about glaucoma. Like Ahmed, who is a glaucoma cataract surgeon, and also Rick Lewis is a glaucoma cataract surgeon. And then we have two people from industry. Jim Mazzo, you all know, who is the CEO at Abbott Medical Optics, and David Milne, who is with Schroeder Ventures. So let's just listen in and learn. And so let's start out. So for your practice, company, or venture capital fund, is the surgical management of glaucoma a priority? And we know it is for Rick, and we know it is for Ike, but what do you think about this, Eric? You represent a very large group, Ophthalmology Consultants of Long Island. You haven't been that excited about surgical glaucoma up until recently, but what's this going to mean to your practice?
Well, I think that for the first time, glaucoma now will go mainstream. Ophthalmologists in general have viewed glaucoma as really a subspecialty that's been isolated because the risk-reward ratio of performing glaucoma procedures wasn't something that the average ophthalmologist was comfortable with. And because of that, glaucoma has been really isolated into the hands of glaucoma specialists, people who do it all the time. Now, for the first time, I think the elegance and the precision of these new procedures, the microinvasive glaucoma procedures, opens up the realm of glaucoma surgery to the average ophthalmologist. And the average ophthalmologist looks at glaucoma, and they look at it from a risk-reward perspective. You're a venture capitalist. You understand risk. Ophthalmologists don't. We don't want to take risks. We want something that works, that's effective and safe, with very little downside. And these MIGS procedures look extremely exciting, and I think this is going to be something that's going to become really standard of care for most ophthalmologists and may actually change the way we look at glaucoma. I think glaucoma medications will be in jeopardy in the very near future as these procedures become more acceptable.
So, Rick, what about the glaucoma specialist?
Well, the problem in glaucoma has been that it isn't only about pressure. It's really predominantly about protecting vision or preserving vision. And the challenge has been that these procedures have so much risk. There's so many complications that the comprehensive ophthalmologist just refuses to deal with it. So they'll treat them on medications, usually too long, until the patient loses too much vision. I think as these new procedures come on board, we get a much safer profile. It'll be much more comfortable for everyone to begin to do surgery earlier. We can preserve vision, and that's, I think it's going to be a practice changer, just like Eric said.
So both glaucoma specialist and comprehensive ophthalmologist cataract surgeon quite interested in having better solutions to our glaucoma patients' needs. David, you invested in this field. What led you to invest?
Because it was going to take.
Are you glad you did?
Yeah. Well, to give you a little background, we started the company with the Innovation Factory and Steve Waite's group about 5 years ago. And so that was back in the days, I think, when we thought things were 3 to 4 years for development. Now we realize that they're a lot longer. But no, I mean, I can only speak from the perspective of looking at a broad number of surgical types of investments that we make. And what I liked about the area of glaucoma was, one, not a lot of work had been done on minimally invasive surgery, which is the standard kind of route that we go when we create companies, going from surgery to more minimally invasive, and that really hadn't been done yet. The second one is we look for big populations that are refractive to drugs and where patients are non-compliant, and this was a classic one where all those factors were in play. So for the classic questions that VCs ask themselves, are they interested in an area, this one checked all the boxes pretty well.
And Jim Mazzo, is this in Abbott's future, do you think? Is this something that you talk about frequently in your team?
Well, I think what I heard from the three gentlemen that presented, the concept is we take it from the patient. So we first look at the patient, and is the patient going to be better as we go forward on a technology? That's how we look at it from Abbott. If you think about it, and I think Ron Bach said it at the end, the average glaucoma patient is on 2 to 3 pharmacological therapies. Now, we all know that compliance is gone when it comes to 2 to 3 pharmaceutical preparations. If you can have a surgical intervention, for us at Abbott, devices, are an extremely appropriate manner to be able to get to the cause. So at the end of the day, if the patient is happier, you're going to get compliance. I think this is definitely a key area that we've focused on. We have a small little play in it, but we're looking at it even more so from that end.
Okay. Valuable, helpful. So question 2, do you expect microinvasive or minimally invasive glaucoma surgery to increase the frequency of surgery as the preferred option for the treatment of glaucoma? So all of the patients, if you looked at the data that was presented, most of them, many of them at least, were on a med, and even the trabeculectomy tube shunt patients are on a med. But a med is maybe easier to manage than 3 meds. But are you going to see us doing more surgery? Are we going to see less reliance on meds, or are they going to be synergistic? How's it going to work, Ike?
Well, I can tell you from my practice, we've had access to MIGS for some time now. The iStent's been approved for the last 3 years in Canada. I mean, it's really completely changed our practice. We combine MIGS with pretty well every glaucoma patient with cataract surgery. The opportunity to get off medications or reduce medications are big. I can tell you it's been a threat to trabeculectomies. We're doing less trabs. If we can get away with MIGS and leave the door open for trabs, it gives us that option. So it's made a huge difference in my practice and many of our fellow Canadian surgeons based on that experience. I think it will become preferred, whether you're going in at the time of cataract surgery or now as a solo procedure. And yes, medications and synergy, I think, are an important principle in getting pressures down to those that need pressures like 13 or 14, for example.
Well, Eric, what about the cataract surgeon and the corneal surgeon?
Well, for the first time, glaucoma is really becoming very similar to refractive and cataract surgery. We're here at ASCRS, the American Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgery. What cataract and refractive surgery have in common is an elegance and a precision and an improvement of quality of life, something that glaucoma surgery never had before. And now with MIGS, I think we can start thinking in terms of not only can we control pressure, we can improve compliance, but this is a procedure that improves quality of life. It makes people happier. Taking glaucoma medications every day for the rest of your life is disheartening. It affects the ocular surface. It impacts on patient comfort. And if you can offer someone a procedure that removes the need for daily medication, I think this is going to be very well accepted. It's really a game changer in that respect. And I'm starting to view glaucoma surgery very similar to the way maybe Abbott views refractive and cataract surgery. You're here to change people's lives, to really improve the quality of their experience. The glaucoma is almost a secondary procedure here. And on top of that, the cost of glaucoma medications for a lifetime versus a MIGS procedure is going to make this economically very viable in a lot of countries. We all went to Armenia, where we put these devices in hundreds of very poor people, many of them phakic. And we had the experience of seeing these people really respond to therapy, and the idea that one microinvasive glaucoma surgery could remove the need for glaucoma medications for 20 or 30 years makes it a very cost-effective procedure as well.
I'm going to set the scene and then ask one more discussant, Rick, to give me his comments. But we do about 3.3 million cataract operations a year, and surveys suggest that if we include glaucoma, glaucoma suspect, ocular hypertension, 15 to 20% of them have at least an elevated IOP or might be in the ocular hypertension category. So that's like 500,000 procedures a year where we're already in the eye. Then we have our refractory glaucomas, but they're really arguably somewhat less frequent. So we've got 8,000 cataract surgeons, maybe 1,000 glaucoma surgeons. So how is this going to sort out for you in your practice? You do both.
I do both. And I think what's interesting here is when I was in residency I finished in 1982, the indications for cataract surgery was about a 20/60, 20/80 eye because you're always concerned about risk. We were doing intracaps. The risk profile was so great that you were really hesitant until someone really had significant visual loss. Obviously, in the last 30 years, the indications for cataract surgery have dropped dramatically, and it's a very safe procedure. People are electing to have refractive lens exchanges with vision of 20/20 or 20/25 now because they believe in the safety. You compare that to glaucoma surgery, where in that same problem exists now. People are very hesitant to have glaucoma surgery, even in the presence of advanced field loss, because the risk of losing more vision from the surgery is so great. What these new procedures are doing, and we could start off even with the Express to some extent by standardizing the whole now with the newer canal procedures, and even specifically with the aquasis, where we now have a standardized approach that creates a defined hole and a defined procedure. One further example of that is if you ask other glaucoma surgeons how they do trabeculectomy, you ask 10 different surgeons, you'll get 10 different answers to how they do it. You ask them how to do these new procedures, there's one way to do it. There's going to be one approach. It's going to be the way that we all do it. It's going to be standardized, just like phacoemulsification is done.
Well, let's go on here, and there may be some interesting discussion here, but what's going to be the most frequent indication for MIGS in 5 years? Is it going to be those severe refractory glaucomas where tubes and trabeculectomies may have failed? Is it going to be primarily a combined procedure in cataract surgery, which means the primary customer would probably be the cataract surgeon? Will we be going so far along that if patients just don't like taking meds, they might choose to have this procedure done? Think about it. Could it ever be like LASIK? Could it be you can wear glasses, you wear contact lenses, or we can fix it? So as you look ahead, what do you think? And so Eric, let's start with you on that one.
The answer to this depends upon your practice, Dick. For the glaucoma surgeons, they're going to be dealing with refractory glaucoma procedures, but the market for this procedure is going to be the cataract surgeons and bringing them into glaucoma surgery. And for the average cataract surgeon, they don't want to take care of advanced glaucoma. I don't want to see a patient who has a risk of a visual field snuffing out. I want to be taking care of people who are on 1 or 2 medications, who have ocular hypertension, who are having cataract surgery, or electively choose not to want to have glaucoma medications. The incidence of dry eye and the comorbidity of dry eye and glaucoma is extraordinarily large, and removing glaucoma medications from the burden of these patients is going to significantly improve their quality of life. So I'm going to say in my practice, it's going to be people who electively want to not take glaucoma medications or having cataract surgery at the same time with minimal glaucoma.
So who's doing it in Canada right now, Ike, and what are they doing, and in whom?
Yeah, so predominantly at this point in time, it's been combined with cataract surgery. But in the last year now, we have seen elective patients who are on medications who are not tolerating them very well to proceed with the procedure. We are now studying this procedure in patients who are uncontrolled in medications and need a target that isn't so low, but maybe, for example, mid to high teens, and to reduce medication burden at least. So, I mean, the last number 2, 3, and 4 are areas I think that have great potential, but I think the majority will still be in the combined cataract population until we get comfortable with it. In 5 years, probably surgeons will get comfortable with it, and then they'll move on to looking at as elective or perhaps even the uncontrolled patient in the glaucoma population.
You have a comment, Rick?
Yeah, I do. I think if you look at the overall socioeconomic or medical economic picture of treating glaucoma, and you look at the cost of medications and follow-up visits, which is usually between 2 and 4 visits per year, including visual fields and all the other things that we test for, if we had a combined procedure or an individual procedure that eliminated a lot of that, so it became an annual visit, we could really significantly reduce the cost. And I think government institutions will begin to look at the big picture of what the cost of glaucoma care is. So I think it's in our favor to do this.
When you look at one of the slides that was presented that talked about the, in quotes, somewhat slow progress in new devices for glaucoma, one of the issues has been how do you get a return on investment with something that's done in an extraordinarily small number of patients. So for Jim, how many bar valves a year do you sell? Do you know? Probably not.
Not enough.
More than 10.
Not enough. More than 10, less than what I need.
What's a bar valve?
But I mean,
okay, Eric, back off.
So you got into that. You got into that business even with a relatively small opportunity, but now we're looking at something that could be a lot bigger. So.
I agree. The answer from a business perspective is yes to all 4, because I think the opportunity lies, and if you think of the 3 gentlemen that presented, and I even think Tom, I've known Tom for a long time, so Tom Burns, if you look at his chronology of products, and you look at the ease of insertion of those, go back to why FAAO and why IOLs have advanced, it's because of ease of insertion. We always talk about that we tend to talk to the top 2% of physicians, and that's always the worst people to get input from, because the top 2% can make anything look well. We need to look at the 80% who will do the majority of it simply by the size. Their ease of convenience to get that product in and have that instantaneous response from the patient of acceptance, as well as you saw what Tom and the rest of the guys are doing from a reimbursement standpoint, Dick, I think that this is just going to have a huge opening of opportunity because it meets the patient, it meets the physician, and it meets the government regulations, reimbursement. When you have those three aligned, it's a winner.
Mike, have you had anyone come in who just didn't like taking drops or would like to not have to do that, that was willing actually just to pay to have this done?
Yes, yes. I mean, I've had patients. I've had patients come from various parts of the country for some of the newer procedures we've been doing the canaloplasty procedure, and there'll be people coming from all over and are willing to pay cash because they want to get off drops. Their disease is not controlled, and so patients, glaucoma patients in particular, tend to be a compulsive lot because they're always on the threshold of going blind. They're really tuned into this new technology, and they're very anxious to get involved in this.
So we may be evolving out of a prevent blindness also towards a quality of life kind of a procedure with this new technology. So let's take it a step further. You know, would it ever be possible that we could have a surgical procedure that could be considered a first-line therapeutic option? And as I mentioned, we now have patients come in that are myopic or have astigmatism, and we really do offer them the alternatives of glasses, contacts, or refractive surgery. Will we be offering, for example, meds versus laser versus minimally invasive glaucoma surgery? So we talked about, you mentioned it already, but let's do it again. I mean, is this really a possible reality? Could this really someday be a elective patient pay procedure? I mean, what do you think?
You know, in Canada, there are some jurisdictions where this is happening, where basically patients are offered medications or, for example, a device, and this has been a successful model that's already been occurring in a socialized country, interestingly enough. I think that, the question of first line is an interesting question. I think if many years ago we would have thought that ALT would be first line, I think most people would argue that ALT, or for that matter SLT, wouldn't necessarily jump to first line. I think a lot of practices are offering laser trabeculoplasty first line, and certainly for patients who may be medication intolerant or not cooperative or compliant, it would be an option. So I wouldn't put it off the table. I would still say I think that just glaucoma in nature, I like to start with something that has the patient understanding the disease itself and coming back for follow-up. And I think that down the road it might, but there are patient pay models already. There are instances where we have used technology now first line, where traditionally it's been second or third line in glaucoma. So I can see the day coming whereas the technology improves and the procedure improves and an in-office procedure develops. This could be something that could occur.
And I'll ask you this too, Eric. I have patients now that come in, for example, they are highly hyperopic, so they have a significant disability from their refractive error. They also have mild glaucoma. They'd like to reduce their dependence on glasses, and all those indications add up. You tend to be a little more aggressive in doing surgery. And in some cases, the patients have almost no cataract or no cataract and end up paying for the surgery, but they get a glaucoma benefit, a refractive error benefit, a quality of life benefit. What do you think? Is that going to be something we'll do commonly? Your turn, Eric.
Yeah, I think that what you're hearing here is the difference between a glaucoma surgeon and a refractive cataract surgeon. And in the hands of a refractive surgeon, this is going to be first-line therapy for me when someone comes in, especially if they have a cataract. If I'm doing a cataract surgery on someone with ocular hypertension, why wouldn't I put in a microinvasive glaucoma device? You'd have to talk me out of it. It makes sense to do this. I think as we develop experience and comfort with it, it will become primary therapy. And around the world, and we're not just talking about the United States, we should talk about the worldwide experience. We all came back from Armenia where this was first-line therapy. Patients can't buy eye drops there. They can't afford it. So we put in literally hundreds of these devices as first-line therapy for people with glaucoma who were phakic, probably very difficult patients to implant it. And these patients did extraordinarily well. My experience on having seen how well these patients did as a primary procedure makes me very optimistic that as we become confident and comfortable, MIGS will become first-line therapy and glaucoma medications will decline over the next several years.
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
I would say, to put some realism to it as well, I think it's all in the question of reimbursement. I think that's a key question. And I still think at the end of the day, even with the advancements we've seen here, on a general population, I still think somewhat easier to write a script right off the bat. So I think your answer of refractive specialist, Eric, versus traditional ophthalmologist, I think that's where I would sit there and say I think reimbursement and easier to write a script right off the bat would be the challenge. But I don't think it takes away from the opportunity that the three gentlemen showed, because I still think this is a huge opportunity.
David?
Yeah, it's hard to follow a panel like this, but I can bring a perspective, having spent a number of years in cardiology too. I think that I think what happens is these things get ahead of the actual data that we're showing. I mean, the natural progression of data, particularly when the FDA raises the bar as they have in glaucoma, you have these very controlled studies that are done. The data starts showing promise, and everybody asks these questions that are broader. And I know I'm supposed to have rose-colored glasses of a venture capitalist, but I also spend a lot of time in marketing, and the reality is it takes a long time, because after the controlled FDA trials, then what you get into is more open label trials, which then provide data for more masses. But then the most important factor is when it gets into the real world hands, how is then the safety and how is the risk profile? What is the learning curve? And what is really the efficacy? And how is that all going to play out? And I think those things take generally, you said 5 years before. I think it probably takes 5 to 10 years for it to go really that far out to these kinds of questions. I think that's the natural progression when you get into these less invasive surgery options, and it's a balance of all four of those factors.
Bless you.
5. So we've talked about this a little bit, but who will be the primary user in 5 years? Will it be the comprehensive ophthalmologist, the 8,000 cataract surgeons, or the consultative glaucoma specialists? And will this change in any way the patterns of practice in that regard? What's happening in Canada? Ike, anything?
So I think it's interesting when you have a device like this in glaucoma. Typically, people look toward the glaucoma specialist for advice and for their thoughts. And traditionally, what's happened is there's been some negativity with this because in my patient it doesn't work. And obviously, the patient that they're talking about is the advanced patient that needs a low pressure that has advanced disease. But we've seen things shift, and we've seen that the majority of the implants that are being used, the devices now, are in the general, cataract high volume surgeon. We do see a lot of hybrids as well, cataract glaucoma specialists as well. So I think that's going to be the group that's going to do the bulk of them. We see a lot of interest, though, from the traditional glaucoma surgeons now getting into this, but I think the key with them and the challenge for us has been the right patient population, because we see it being used in the wrong patient population with results that are not what expected to be in that patient population, and then the glaucoma specialty or the group becomes somewhat negative. They do hold some power in the sense of opinion leaders, and that's how technology can sometimes be held back a little bit. So how this goes out, they're picking the right patient, the right people are going to be important with this, but I definitely put my hat in the comprehensive side as far as the bulk of the users.
So Eric, you're a cataract cornea refractive surgeon, and all of a sudden you're really excited about minimally invasive glaucoma surgery.
Yeah, what will happen is that most ophthalmologists will look to the glaucoma specialists and ask their opinion about where MIGS stand in their armamentarium. Once the glaucoma specialists give it the blessing, then I think it will be adopted pending those phase 4 and later trials where we start seeing a broader experience. So earlier on, it depends upon how the glaucoma community adopts this and expresses their love or hate for these devices. And I think that there's two different groups of glaucoma specialists out there. There are the people who are the kind of the glaucoma cataract surgeons, who I think are sitting right here with me, and then there's the kind of the ivory tower glaucoma surgeons who are going to probably look at this and not be as excited as we are. Once you get past that and people start having good experiences, I think 5 years from now, it's clearly going to be the comprehensive ophthalmologist doing most of this. And what's going to happen is the glaucoma surgeons are just going to be seeing the train wrecks. You're going to be seeing just the end-stage glaucoma on 3 medications who've already had MIGS inserted, who need some type of a significant procedure. The easy, straightforward cases will be done by the comprehensive ophthalmologist.
Now, Rick, you're really engaged in leadership positions with the Glaucoma Society and also with ASCRS in teaching. And how is this going to launch out? And what are your glaucoma colleagues saying?
I think in addition to what's been said, because I agree, but I think the glaucoma specialists will do it first, but I think what's going to motivate the comprehensive ophthalmologist will be two incentives. One, obviously, is money. Reimbursement is going to be a big piece of this. If it's reimbursable and adoptable, the comprehensive ophthalmologist will do it. If it's easy to do and uncomplicated, there's no question that the comprehensive ophthalmologist, about 40% of his practice is glaucoma patients. They're all looking for cures. It's a great practice enhancer if you have a treatment or a, quote, cure for glaucoma. So I think that's one incentive. But the other incentive, academically based, would be a study that gets these device companies to compare their device to medical treatment. And I'm fairly convinced that with the right design of these studies, you could show that the device provides better long-term vision care, visual protection than medication does because of compliance and cost. So, we need that study that the phase 3, phase 4 studies will give us.
Now, Jim and David, nobody, people often don't like to sell big pieces of equipment that they have to maintain and all of that. That's kind of a barrier. But to sell a device, I mean, that's pretty much your bread and butter, right? I mean, this has to be pretty downstream as far as developing a launch plan, right? I mean, is this pretty simple?
Well, I think the concept, and I don't know if Ike or Eric said it, but I think we have to think about this answer by geographies. And I would tell you that I think certain geographies, you would see the comprehensive ophthalmologists gravitate to this a lot quicker than other geographies. But I still say, if you take the primary user and take that from dollars to quantity, the refractive cataract specialist will be the largest audience base for this because they have the mentality of how to position this with the patient.
Okay. Dick, can I just comment on that a little bit?
Are you going to agree with me?
I agree with that.
Okay, good. Then you can go ahead.
I can go ahead now. I've gotten permission. As a cataract surgeon, I look at how I can improve patients' quality of life and how after the surgery they can feel that their expectations have been exceeded. We do that commonly now with cataract surgery by removing glasses. If you can remove someone's glasses and remove their glaucoma medications at the same time, that becomes a tremendous practice builder for the cataract surgeon, and this will significantly drive glaucoma practices and cataract practices in adopting these devices. When a patient comes out after cataract surgery, they've gotten rid of their +4 spectacles, and they're off of their 2 medications on no medications, that patient tells everyone they know about the experience, and that's what builds market share.
I heard one very high-volume surgeon describe it as the 3G syndrome. Glaucoma, glasses, and glare, which means a very early cataract. If they've got glaucoma, glasses, and glare, they're going to get phaco IOL, correct the refractive error, maybe a advanced technology IOL, treat their astigmatism, presbyopia, and a MIGS procedure. So, number 6, are there other things that we need to do a better job? Are there other devices, other opportunities? We heard from several companies, but are all the opportunities gone? Rick?
Well, I think that the next big merger will be that merger between drug delivery and devices. And so, if we can package a device that surgically manages glaucoma with a device that also enhances or protects or regenerates the optic nerve, we're going to treat glaucoma in 2 different ways. And so, we talk about regulatory hurdles with the FDA for devices. I mean, this is a nightmare that I can't envision, but I think that's where it's going to go, is drug delivery through devices. And I think that these new devices we talked about today are setting the stage for that combination.
So lots of other unmet needs too, right? I mean,
yeah, I would add to that. And I mean, one of the challenges we have with any glaucoma procedure is healing, even with MIGS. And I see, a synergy between coating or drug elution to deal with that issue as far as long-term healing, which is going to be an issue for any of these procedures that we've talked about. And also diagnostically, we kind of assume every glaucoma patient is exactly the same. They're going to respond the same. Truly, it's a heterogeneous group. I mean, we already talked about some diagnostics outflow studies. This patient may be better for Sem's canal versus suprachoroidal versus subconj. Being able to customize the approach is something that diagnostics will hopefully provide some breakthrough as we merge with these devices.
This reminds me a little bit about when LASIK was just coming on the marketplace, and glaucoma is really hot right now. I mean, everybody wants to be, every ophthalmology resident wants to do a glaucoma fellowship. every ophthalmology practice is trying to hire someone who has glaucoma fellowship training. The most in-demand ophthalmologist today is a well-trained glaucoma specialist. So there definitely is a lot of excitement amongst ophthalmologists that glaucoma has a great future. So let's get really aggressive now and see if there's any thoughts here. So maybe we don't even need to do this in an ASC. Maybe it can be like LASIK, we just do it in the office. Is this ever an office procedure? Eric?
Again, follow the money. If the reimbursement is such that the doctor is reimbursed for doing the office as well or better than doing an ASC, then I think it becomes an office procedure. The facility fee right now would, I think, for the most part, keep these procedures in a certified operating room. But as we all know, those things can change, and I think you have to follow. But the question is, can this be done in an office? Absolutely, it can be done in an office. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and you know, you look at the example of what retinal surgeons did with Avastin injections and how what 15, 20 years ago would have been unthinkable to be doing every 6 weeks an injection in the office is now standard of care. Every retina office is packed full of Avastin injections, Lucentis injections for macular degeneration. And these procedures are only a few minutes longer than that. These are not long procedures. Anybody with a minor operating room in their office with a microscope can theoretically do this. But I think it is going to be driven by reimbursement, and Medicare needs to come of age here in this.
Yeah, I would add that, I mean, the step even forward to that would be at the slit lamp, which it may sound a little bit far away, but I can see at least some of these procedures being amenable to even being performed at the slit lamp down the road. So I think this is where we're going. The reimbursement is another issue, but these are all designed to be done in that kind of environment.
And final comment by you, Jim, and then any questions people on the panel have for one another in our last 3 minutes. But how big of a asset to the field is the pioneering work that's been done with CMS, getting codes and ability to reimburse and whatnot? Has that added a lot of value? And as an example, perhaps to other entrepreneurs, you know, our FDA has been telling us, you know, don't just talk to us, talk to CMS, have a plan right from the beginning that speaks to both, and your future will be brighter. I mean, is this a first example of that?
Well, I don't want to give too much away because I'm going to talk a little about that. I don't want anybody leaving the room earlier than this. But the answer is most definitely. If you relate this to femtocataract and the trials and tribulations that we're having right now, and I think Tom Burns talked about it early on how he's done it, and I know the other two gentlemen as well, that is the critical component. If you cannot get this reimbursed or cannot get this solidified, the audience will sit back and wait, even with the technology being as advanced as it is. So I would say that as a potential person that would be involved in this from selling it, I would say if it doesn't have the right reimbursement codes, Dick, we are going to limit the availability regardless of how strong the technology can be. And I would say that this group has taken it farther than I've seen any other segment. I have to congratulate what they've done here because I don't think we've done this in any other area.
So are there some lessons learned there for the entrepreneur and venture capitalist? Or
well, yeah,
some lenses to learn?
I could only amplify it because when we started Aquasys, I mean, that was the goal, is to say it's an office procedure. Since then, I've actually worked in 2 other companies. One that's been successful in moving a procedure from the hospital to the office, the other one which has not been successful yet, and it's hinged totally on the safety of the device and reimbursement. And reimbursement really is a factor of the physician's support for wanting it in the medical societies. And in the case where it took a long time to get reimbursement, it was because the societies said they were for it, but they really weren't. They didn't get behind it. There was some conflicts between 2 different surgical specialties that were involved. And I think that really opens the door, because I don't think that the payers have necessarily a problem, but they're looking for a weakness in the system and a naysayer. And what's encouraging in this case is that you've got, you know, several constituencies of ophthalmologists all agreeing that it should go to the office, that it could be safe enough, it's effective, it'll work really well. And if that happens, then I'd be very encouraged that you can get reimbursement. And I agree with Jim. Without it, you don't have an office procedure, no matter what the procedure is like.
Okay, well, I think that was a great discussion. I learned a lot as well, and thank you very much to our panelists.
Good job, boss.